Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we are joined by a special guest, Bianca LaRue, who is a mental health advocate and an owner of Nora Mental Health in Fort Worth, Texas. We're excited to have you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, we had kind of been chatting before. I've looked at a lot of the social media stuff that you post. You're a mental health advocate, and you have a personal story. You also came to America when you were young. Is this
Very at 18 years old.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you've got the background of growing up in South Africa, seeing their whole system, mental health as a child, growing up in that, and then coming over and seeing our wonderful mental health system.
Yes.
Yeah. And I like the not just the opinions that you express on those things, but when I was watching your video the other day, very sound, very compassionate. And I think our viewers tonight are going to benefit from hearing your personal experience and just kind of what pulled you in this direction. And so maybe we can start there, just kind of what got you passionate about being a mental health advocate, to seek your degree in mental health, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I was born and raised in South Africa. Was living there for 18 years, and life was rough. And I remember always feeling, I was around 15 years old, and I always was like, something's wrong. Like, what's wrong with me? And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I really wasn't allowed to get a lot of help because it's so stigmatized around there. And it was really hard to get care. And I always remember writing in my journals everywhere when I was a teenager, like, one day I want to help people. One day I want to help young adolescents so they can have a better future. I never wanted anybody to ever feel the same way about what's wrong with me. I wanted them to get help. And when I moved to America, it was mind-blowing how more people talk about mental health openly, but I soon realized how flawed the system is still. Mm-hmm. And same thing, when I got help a few years ago, there was waitlisted everywhere. I was waitlisted and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to look for help anymore because, well, you're waitlisted for this X amount of months, or we can't help you here. And I just felt a sort of like I didn't have much hope left. And I always said, like, one day I want to help other people. And finally, I found Nora. And they align with my vision of I can help so many people in this community, specifically in Fort Worth. And that is something I've always wanted to do, to make sure that nobody else feel that same way, that they are not alone. And I just want to be the voice for other people.
Yeah. And Nora Mental Health, is this just like a general mental health outpatient? Is it
Yes.
inpatient as well, or?
Yeah, so it's a franchise. So yep, I'm the owner of the Fort Worth location. We're only outpatient, so we provide individual therapy. We have 4 therapists right now. Hopefully, we can have more therapists eventually. And we kind of like tackle different modalities to make sure we can help everybody in the community.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
What do you think is the? This might be a loaded question, but what do you think is the deal in South Africa as to why? Because they're pretty, it's a pretty established country. Why is that aspect of mental health not catching up? Because I've been reading about some of that here and there too.
It's such a tough question because I feel like in my culture specifically, I don't really know anybody in my culture who believes in mental health. I think it's just how we got raised, and I feel like we're so far behind with treatment options. Like before I moved here, I don't even think we had an AA group. So I feel like we're so far behind. When I remember coming to America, and I will share with you, I went to a residential program because I had such a hard time dealing with my own mental health struggles. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a resort, and South, like, what is South Africa doing? I think we're doing a lot better in South Africa right now with care, but we're still so far behind. And I truly don't know. I think people don't feel comfortable talking out loud, saying like, hey, I have a struggle, I have a problem. And then they just mask it. And that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. We got to be able to talk about our struggles.
Yeah.
And you were on a virtual podcast recently, which is the clip that I saw.
Yeah, it was in person, but yes, I did a podcast as well.
Gotcha. So the difference is that it just wasn't live.
Yes, exactly.
The clip I was watching, you were sharing how important it was, and you were I got the sense, right, advocating for people going to therapy, right, individual therapy, but having those shared experiences and that being one of the major drives as to why this has become such a life passion of yours.
Exactly.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because I think it's an important topic we touch on this show often.
Well, something for me is I've seen a lot of different therapists, and it's hard for me to relate to a therapist if they haven't really been through something similar. I remember I'm very passionate about exposure response prevention therapy, and that's my dream, is to become an ERP therapist one day. And it's so hard because they tell you to do these exposures for like panic attacks and stuff, but they haven't experienced a panic attack before. And I'm like, man, but you don't know how hard it is. You can say how much exposures to do, but they truly don't know how hard it is to have a panic attack every day. And that's what drives me, is like, I just want to help these people and know that I can relate to them. Like, I know how hard it is to live with mental health struggles, and I want to show them all the skills I've learned along the years so I can help them the same way.
Yeah. Does the center that you're working with, do they do a lot of work with panic attacks and anxiety disorders and things like that?
Currently, we don't have a therapist who work with ERP specifically. We do have a therapist who work with OCD, which I'm really happy about, but that is the goal for me, to have ERP therapists in our clinic. There's such a high need in the community for it. There's just not enough, I feel like, therapists who works with obsessive compulsive disorder and related phobias.
Yeah, being passionate about these things and then stepping into an ownership opportunity where you're overseeing a therapy practice, that's got to be really fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
To just kind of be a part of that process and see it unfold. I know as a therapist, but I imagine right on the back end where you may interface with the clients a little bit more of their experiences, that's got to be fulfilling for you too.
Oh, it's a dream come true. It's been a lifelong dream, and it doesn't feel like work to me. It's I feel like there's finally like hope, again, and it's just such a big purpose.
Yeah. Is that kind of part of a tagline you would share to those checking in and listening to something like this, as far as why to seek individual therapy? Like, I'm always interested. I talk to therapists all the time, and you've seen the show. We bring on therapists and different advocates, but hearing from an owner's perspective, I think would be wonderful for people to hear too. Like, why seek therapy?
I just feel like I think everybody needs therapy. Therapy can, it's really good for anybody to learn healthy coping skills. But personally, I would really recommend, if anybody knows of anybody who struggles, that therapy, there's help out there, and you don't have to feel alone in your struggles. That's what I want Nora Fort Worth to be like. We're here. We want to support you. We want to provide compassionate care, and we want to make sure that you have a life worth living. And that's just kind of what I live by.
Yeah.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any judgment going to therapy, and I still know a lot of people who are pretty much like judgmental towards the mental health field, and there shouldn't be judgment when you seek help for yourself.
Yeah, there's still quite a large stigma.
Such a large stigma. Yeah.
And as you're studying these things, we know it's like whenever there's a large stigma, it's the unresolved personal patterns, right? And then you take that to a societal level, and that's it's just gonna increase that stigma.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you see just kind of as the predominant issues that are coming into Nora in the area that you guys are in? Is there like a specific diagnosis that's coming in often?
Honestly, I would say something that's really big is trauma, that a lot of people are seeking help for. Anxiety. Anxiety is so hard in this society right now. I would say anxiety, depression, and trauma is like the big ones people are seeking help for. And luckily, we do have therapists who do EMDR, and I'm super happy to have that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you got to talk to the politicians back home in South Africa with the experiences you have now, what would you say to them?
That's a tough question. I would say to make mental health a priority, have more access and help available for people, because it exists. No matter what country you live in, mental health exists everywhere. And I just urge the society to speak openly about it. There should be no shame and judgment around it. And we do need more mental health services in South Africa. And even here, I would love that one day we can all just, not shame people for seeking help.
Yeah. What do you think that's about? Why do people, it's like when you observe it, people are so quick to turn on people they love when, you get into these realms of like, it's shameful.
Oh,
Right?
I've experienced it. I know. I don't know. I feel like since my culture, it's still the same way. Here, I found a lot of shame as well. I just feel like I don't know if it's like how like parents raising their kid. I don't know what it is, but or if it's where they're like hearing the shame, like it should be shameful to get help, but it's not helping anybody. It makes everything worse, And if somebody can't get help, then that's kind of where I go back to why I wanted to start a company is because when I was in South Africa again, I felt so alone, and I felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And if I could just got the help that I needed at that time, I think I would have been in better shape right now too. Yeah.
Yeah. Is your family still over there in South Africa?
Yes.
Or? Yeah.
Yeah, I moved here by myself when I was 18. It came with a lot of different more issues.
Did you come here for school?
I did. I came here to be a flight attendant, believe it or not. And that's why I'm so passionate about the ERP field, because I actually have a fear of flying now. So I always share this story. So yeah,
but
definitely.
You just got to be jazzed about all these plane stories coming.
You have no idea. I'm trying to do the exposure work right now to get on a plane, but it's not looking so good.
Yeah. Did you do some of that work when you first got here, doing the flight attendant work, and then?
Yeah, I had no fear. And that's kind of what happens with anxiety, right? If you have so much time to think and everything creeps in and you don't get help right away, it just becomes just blows up.
Yeah, a behemoth, some would say, just a massive problem.
Oh,
While we have access to chat through your personal experience, I think it would be great to highlight that underbelly of like, I thought you put it so brilliantly of like, if you don't address it quickly, it becomes a compounding problem.
Exactly.
And what was, we don't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, you're fine.
What would you say about that in your personal experience that people need to know about anxieties and why it's so important to get in front of it quickly?
And I will share, I do struggle with panic disorder. And I've been struggling with panic disorder for 13 years now. So I get panic attacks every single day. And I have tried a lot of therapy, and it has been so helpful, but I didn't get the therapy I needed when I was younger to tackle this panic attacks. And it blew up. I masked it and said, okay, everybody says I'm okay. Well, that means I'm okay. Well, then I become an adult, and I came here, and I was like, oh, I don't feel okay, but I'm okay. And, and you keep like masking, and everything's okay, and it blew up, then constant panic attacks. I didn't want to leave my house. I started becoming agoraphobic. I was housebound. I couldn't drive anymore. My whole life was just, I couldn't function. And it was so hard on my family too, because, for 3 years I felt like I wasn't living. And if I was just open and I got the help that was needed younger, and also here in America, if I had the right type of therapy right away, it could have saved my life so much sooner. And that's why I urge like people who have panic attacks, and I'm a big advocate for panic disorder, phobias, OCD, like really hard, intense anxiety, to get help. Like it's okay. And, there's a lot of compassionate and empathetic therapists out there who are well trained, and specifically when it comes to like panic attacks. For instance, going to the grocery store is really hard for me. And doing exposures, like working your way up to it, then you go to the grocery store and you face it, and you realize, okay, this won't kill me. Like it's okay. Like it will pass. Like, the only way out is through. And I just think it's really important to address mental health pretty early on.
Yeah. For that purpose, I think in so many other aspects of our lives, right? When the problem is behind the door, and I know something's scratching at the door, it sounds kind of like a puppy, right?
Yeah.
And I just kind of ignore it, right? And then I come back, and now it's like pushing on the door, right? That puppy got a little bigger, right?
Exactly.
And then when I open it up, it's a full-grown Rottweiler, and I think a lot of people with their mental health are dealing with that struggle, that the problem got bigger, and by the time they open the door, they want to just slam it back shut.
Exactly. And it's so hard because then there's so much to work through. If you could just get the help sooner. And you can get help at any time, wherever you are in the mental health journey, but it would be a lot easier to tackle it as soon as you know there's an issue.
I think that is something that's gotten a lot better in our lifetime, right? I'm sure you can attest to this even more so than me growing up in America, but in the 90s, growing up, no one ever talked about therapy. Never heard about it. Even when you get into your teen years, the last thing you're going to hear your parents and your parents' friends and teachers at school are suggesting therapy, and that is something that has shifted. I think there's like a pendulum swing where now sometimes it gets weaponized on the internet, and there's a bunch of conversations about diagnoses and things like that.
Yeah.
But the balance I think that a lot of people are finding is that, oh, this is good to talk through my struggles.
I think we definitely came a very long way. Yeah.
You think we've gone too far in some ways? I always like to ask people that question. I'm boots on the ground, so I'll ask anybody that question because sometimes I get in the mire of it as a therapist.
Yeah. Whew, that's a loaded question. I think I know some people would agree, some people would disagree with this. I think to an extent, some people can go too far with it. I think this is something I'm very big on. I don't want to be known as Bianca, the mental health struggle, or like the anxiety. I want to know that I am separate from my mental illness. Like, I am so much more than my struggles. And I think a lot of people can get caught in that's all they are, and they lose their identity in mental health. And I feel like it has gone far in that way. Because social media can be good and social media can be really bad. And I think, to an extent, I think it can go too far. But I also think we've come a long way talking about it openly too.
Yeah, doing this, me and my team, we've gotten to see the range of where it can go too far in the comment sections. I'm a set it and forget it kind of guy, so I'll post the clips, and then just the comments and the ways people interact with it, you can see where we need to reel it in a little bit. Which is, it's okay too. Look, people are going to take the information and run any direction with it. Our job is to just meet them where they're at, but it's an interesting world we live in.
I know, even being in this field, and I have seen a lot of comments also about like, don't talk about mental health, or like, don't really like that we talk so much about mental health nowadays. But I think it's important work to do. I think I will always advocate for mental health. So people might agree and people might disagree.
Yeah. How far are you into your master's program? Is it social work, MFT?
I'm
LPC?
LPC route. I go to Texas Wesleyan University. I'm in my second semester, so pretty soon. It's been a long journey, and this is something I also say is it took me almost 7 years to graduate with my undergrad because of struggling with my own mental health. And I always felt like, I'm so far behind, in front of everybody. And eventually I learned like everybody has their own journey, and I finally started my graduate program. So I will be going full time. So hopefully graduate sooner rather than later. Yeah. Now,
being an owner of a branch of Nora Mental Health, do you get to do any of your hours there? Is that a conflict of interest? You're going to have to go outside, huh?
I can, but I'm not going to. I want to keep it separate. I do want to keep it separate. Yes, we have a phenomenal clinical director, and they're just the best in our clinic, and so I definitely want to have that separate. And I do want to do my hours at an ERP clinic.
Very cool. Licensed professional counselor. It's a good route. It's a big one here in Texas.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. I still can't believe I'm in graduate school. I always think, coming from South Africa, your grades need to be a certain thing. Like in 11th grade, it's very important what your grades are. And my grades were not good enough to go to university. And there's no community college in South Africa, so you're done. And when they did my grades and kind of see what my grades are in South Africa towards American standards, I was able to get into community college and university. So I definitely think anything's possible, if anybody out there who's struggling with really hard mental health struggles right now, that they think they can't do what they want to do, they still can. And I hope to be a living proof of that. College is quite a window for mental health struggles.
I think
Oh gosh, yeah.
maybe we could use this moment to just kind of from your experience, but also just the knowledge you have about panic disorders for those listening who may have no knowledge and could be struggling with it. I have clients actively at times where they're coming into the realization that they're having panic attacks and the resources. But what are some of the symptoms? What should people be looking out for?
Oh, it is so hard to struggle with panic attacks. And I would say physical symptoms are, usually like the faster heart rate. It's always so hard because people usually think to have a heart attack when they have a panic attack because the symptoms are so similar to a heart attack. Like fast heart rate, dizziness, shortness of breath. That I always like that analogy of like a sense of like doom. Like you're gonna like, this like adrenaline, wish of adrenaline coming over your body. You feel like you're gonna die. And it is so tough. Even being in school, I've had to do presentations and sitting in class and I have a panic attack and I just have to use all my skills. But somebody who doesn't have the skills, that can be really hard because you don't know what's happening to yourself. And that's what happened with my first panic attack that I had. I thought I was going to die. Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah, the reports of heart attack are often
Yeah.
probably the most common that I start to hear about a panic attack. There's a few others, right? Like the impending doom that can be hidden in certain other routes you really want to assess through because it can appear sometimes it's like a generalized anxiety.
Yeah.
Until you start to hear about the more severe symptoms. It's why, some of our assessment rubrics are pretty in depth for panic attacks, but
Yeah.
I'm having a heart attack is one of the most common reports with a panic attack.
It is so hard. I've been that patient, go to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack or, I think, and then, the blood tests come back normal and you're like, again, this thing, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? And that's why it's so good to have a good therapist, to say like, Bianca, like, let's try this coping skill. If this isn't working, there's always something else that could maybe work for you.
Yeah, I'm curious if you had this experience. I had a client recently in the last couple months. He started to have panic attack symptoms. He had gone to the doctors. Doctors are wonderful. When they're in their lane, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And he comes to me and he had gone through these batteries of tests and he's walking me through it. I'm like, brother, it just sounds like a panic attack. Yeah. And it always shocks me how many medical doctors miss it. It's not their lane, but they miss this one a lot.
Oh yeah, mine's been missed for years. So it's they test for everything and then they keep testing and there's more testing. You go to specialists, you go cardiology, and it almost like, well, what's wrong with me? If they could just maybe, I don't know. I know they need to stand in the lane, but it's super helpful to know like maybe we should see a therapist now.
Yeah, there's this one program based out of New York where it's a hospital setting while you're training, and the psychologists come alongside the medical doctors so that they're in the same room in the treatment process. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It was a program that I was heavily interested in back in the day.
Yeah.
But that, I think there's a lot of hospitals that make that shift. I used to work in a treatment hospital where predominantly the medical professionals were psychiatrists, but it was always psychiatrist, therapist in those initial intakes.
Yeah.
And we caught a lot of stuff that might have otherwise been missed.
That would be so helpful.
Yeah. I'm always encouraged by those kind of new, innovative ways of treatment that are popping up. But, I think there is something to be said, right? If you're having symptoms that make you think you have a heart attack, once you've gotten
the clear,
yeah, we need to start looking. Because even with my client, it wasn't his thought. He doesn't know, right? And that was where I was like, brother, you can't beat yourself up. You don't know the things. That's why you've hired me. Right?
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I know, like South Africa, like specifically, like for 15 to 18 almost years old, I had no clue. I didn't even know what a panic attack meant. And I remember finding myself Googling all these symptoms and like, as a 15-year-old, that is not a good idea.
No.
And I kept Googling. I was like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then maybe I have this disorder. Now I'm self-diagnosing me with all these different disorders. And all I did is I had panic disorder.
Right.
So yeah, Googling not good.
Yeah, stay away from WebMD. You're always going to have cancer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So you're gonna study, get into the field, do ERP. Is this a transition into, other than owning the franchise in Fort Worth? Is this the lifelong work you see yourself doing, being a therapist?
Absolutely. Definitely want to have my own private practice and do specifically exposure response prevention therapy, just because I know there's such a high need. In addition, I do want to do EMDR as well. I found equine therapy, like with equilateral, like EMDR with equine therapy is amazing work. So those were all the dreams for me, but something I've always wanted to do because of my background living in a different country. I would love to talk in different countries and advocate for mental health. That would be the ultimate dream.
Yeah.
There needs to be a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would be your first, let's say a conference was going to pick you up to speak. What would be the first topic you would tackle to go in with a presentation and change people's hearts and minds?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
I'm helping you prep and put one together.
Yeah. I would say stop shaming. I think shame would be a big one I would want to tackle. Because the shame I felt, I still am trying to recoup from that, and it's been so many years. I think we need to figure out how to talk about mental health openly. There needs to be a shift, whether that's having support groups, more support groups out there, like people, like more authority out there talking about it openly. Something just needs to change, and I want to help people see why,
Yeah. What do you do when you, because we all face this, what do you do when you run into the people who don't want to change?
At the end of the day, what is the saying in America? You can only take the horse to the water, you can't make them drink it.
What's the saying in America? Yeah, I grew up on that saying. That's funny.
Ultimately, we can give somebody all the tools.
Yeah.
We can do everything, but if you're not ready for change, we can't make you change. That's a tough one, because I think there is a lot of people out there who is not quite ready for that. And there's also this thing when it comes to panic or other mental illness, like when it comes to the identity, like I identify, like that's my identity, and it's been my identity for years before I was able to get the help. Like all I am is panic, all I am is anxiety. And it's kind of scary to let that go, because once you get the help, well, who am I then? Yeah. What does that look like? I don't know who I am without it. And so that's a tough one. Definitely, it's a process, but at the end of the day, we can't fix somebody. It's more of like we walk alongside with you and give you the coping skills.
Yeah. I guess some would say that some people's identity is to be a dehydrated horse, not drinking.
Yes, exactly. That's funny. Yeah.
I like that point you make too. It's there is such a pull for so many different things in life to be pulled into the self as the identity. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I heard you touching on is, and we've talked about this on the show many times before, but it becomes a place where when we feel out of control, it's like that last thing we have control over.
Exactly.
And letting that go. I mean, if you've never had to, it's like I always tell people listening, like if you've never had to sit with someone to try to get them to let go of something they think they have control over, you should try it. It's wild. It's a rush.
Yeah. I always think about my OCD. It's the one thing I think I have control over, but you don't. Yeah. Like doing specific compulsions, or like maybe if I do this compulsion, something wouldn't happen bad, like something bad wouldn't happen to me. And it's so hard not to do that compulsion, because it's almost like, well, I have control over this. And you don't. Yeah. And that's the hard part when it comes to OCD is the unknown. I don't like the unknown, and so, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, letting go of control. I mean, that is the crux of the issue.
Oh, yeah.
While embracing, right, the paradox is while embracing what I have control of, which, funny enough, is like when our mental health struggles are not our identity, we gain the control of all the things in our life that will allow us to address it.
Yeah.
Right. And to, well, I love paradoxes, right? It's like you address it, it's not your identity, you've detached from it, but now you're embracing it. Yeah. And it's that cohesion, it's that meshing of our understanding of our experiences that just open up a lot of doors. And I imagine this has been your experience, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like, opened up a door to become an owner of a private practice and things that maybe 10 years ago you might not have thought. And here we are.
I know it's been an absolute blessing, and I wouldn't have been here without getting the treatment that I needed. If I didn't get the help, and I advocated a lot for myself to get the help that I needed, the correct help. There's some modalities are not always right for somebody, and to finally have found this ERP, I felt like a breath of fresh air. Like there's hope out there for me.
Yeah. Well, for things like panic attack disorders, and OCD, there are a lot of modalities that can make it worse. And
talk therapy, one of them.
Yes. Yeah. We talked about this on the show a couple months ago. We had a Dallas Therapeutic Services, and one of their owners does a lot of work with OCD. Yeah. And her and I were talking about that, about how traditional just talk therapy, talking through things, can make it worse. And so for those listening, it's like, this is why we bring on so many people with different experiences, is because you got to be able to get out there and kind of know what you're looking for, and know, if there isn't these conversations, people are just kind of shooting in the dark.
Exactly. And unfortunately in graduate school, you don't learn a lot about OCD, and so it's tough, because some therapists they say they work with OCD, but they maybe just know a little bit about OCD. And it's where they have to get those trainings for like exposure response prevention, because that is the golden standard treatment for OCD. And I didn't know about that. So I only got diagnosed in 2019. It took me years, but I finally got it. But also it's important to know when it comes to like panic disorder specifically, because I've struggled with panic attacks for 13 years, and it's like, why? And that's how we found out, well, there's trauma. Like, you need to get to the root of like, why is this happening constantly? And I think that's also important for people to know. Like, we need to get to the root of what is causing these panic attacks.
Yeah, it'd be like a math equation. First order of operation is ERP. Second order of operation would be whatever trauma modality to get those roots kind of nourished.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then more order of operations from there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a saying like, don't have too many cooks in the kitchen. Like having too many therapists can be hard, but there's also sometimes it's okay to have like maybe an ERP therapist and a trauma, like EMDR, because they tackle different modalities.
Yeah, my specialty is working with addictions and family members of those struggling with addictions. And back in the day, when I would work in treatment, I would often, because of the nature of the types of trauma, right, we would have, let's say like a traditional talk therapist and an EMDR therapist. And we would often have that dynamic. And I've heard that all the time with OCD and with panic attacks. Yeah, having that team aspect is really, especially in a private practice setting, it gets really important.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I imagine with ERP, because I've known some over the years as well, you would raise this point, but I think the way I'd like to put it is like the therapist who's willing to get on the plane with you sometimes.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it can get that severe. And so this is also why it's important to make sure you're finding someone when they say like, oh, I specialize in panic disorders. Okay, up until the point you're willing to get on a plane with me or not.
Exactly. I've actually had this experience personally, so I'd love to share it, because
I'd love to hear it.
this is why I want to work in the field, because I'm not talking the talk only. I'm literally walking the walk too. And I still have an issue with flying. To think I was going to be a flight attendant, Alan. It's kind of interesting. But I found a therapist, and they go on the plane with you. And I haven't done that, but I have had a therapist go to the airport with me. And then they will, you know, because it's kind of scary. Like for somebody with panic, and there's like so many people and the lights, and it's just chaotic.
TSA. Why they grabbed my bag?
Yeah, it is. I get a panic attack when I walk in, before I go into the, in the airport.
Plus, I imagine being from another country, right? There are a lot more steps in which they're checking your stuff and making you go through certain gates.
Flying internationally is very scary. It gives me anxiety thinking about it. But yeah, finding my therapist, she first, like, you watch videos on YouTube about like a plane taking off and get like almost desensitized to it. Like, okay, this is the process. We're going to check my bag, and then I'm going to walk down the runway and down the wheel, and I'm going to sit on the plane, and then we're going to be on the runway, kind of like getting desensitized to it. And then eventually we went to the airport. So now we're there, like, you know, in reality. And she walks with me and she talks me through the panic attack. And like, Bianca, like, what are you experiencing? And walking through this. And it's been so helpful. And I got on the plane and I made it. I had a panic attack, but I made it through.
Where were you flying?
I flew to Florida last year, and I made it back too. So,
Nice.
So it's a success story in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for the support that we all know we need in life, and then when there are so many different types of people who can show up in those places. When it's severe, right? We want someone trained, especially early on.
Exactly.
But it just goes to show, it's oftentimes why these problems arise is human beings are keenly aware of the needs that aren't met, that then manifest into problems to try to meet the need that unfortunately unconsciously become perverted into our struggles.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said, like when I've been in treatment, they ask, what's your support system? And that's always been a tough question because I've never really had a big support system. And I think there's something to be said. If you have a good support system, that can help so much too. People who are actually with you on the journey, you know, don't shame you, don't make you feel bad for struggling, but are actually like cheering you on and being that cheerleader. I think that could be so helpful as well. And also support groups. I go to an OCD support group bi-weekly, and it's been a lifesaver knowing, because if you have friends or family members who doesn't go through it, they see firsthand, but they don't experience the symptoms. And going to these support groups, it's just like, I'm okay. Like, I'm not alone.
Right. Yeah, because there's also the aspect as well of, with a mental health diagnosis, maybe they just can't fathom it because they don't have that diagnosis. But then there's also the realm of they're struggling in the same exact way and won't admit it to themselves.
Exactly.
There's so many variants of this where the support community, what we would say maybe like with boundaries is like your chosen family, the people
I love
who
that word,
understand deeply who you are.
Yeah.
Where it's almost as if a higher power put them on your path because they get you. Those things are irreplaceable.
100%. I believe in a chosen family too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it was something I was introduced to when I stepped into the 12-step rooms. I grew up, in the disease of alcoholism, and I didn't understand how important that was.
Yeah.
Because, in my young 20s, it was like all the way through my life, I played baseball for 19 years. I had guys around, but then as soon as that's done for a dude, it's like, it's done. Poof, where is everybody?
Yeah.
And so getting that support, not even just when it's your mental health, but especially, I mean, that's the bulk of the work I do in my traditional talk therapy is resources, community resources, connecting with people. Because once you start to sort through the issues, you realize that like once food, water, shelter, right, your community and relational needs are the very next thing that has to be addressed.
Exactly.
Or you're going to be pretty miserable in life.
Yeah. It's been tough for me, even coming from South Africa to America. It's been so hard finding that chosen family, but I definitely believe in it. And I do believe that we need that support. Talking about alcoholism, I don't want to talk too much about it, but my mother died from alcoholism. And I just did this in my paper presentation for school and grad school. And this question was, what could have helped? If like to help them. And I always think AA.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been so helpful, you know, because if they just feel like they're not alone. I always come back to the support system, because there weren't no AA, and I think that would have been so helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, right, that we want to stay focused on your experience, but I
Yeah.
think a snippet with that is we know the program's been around for almost 100 years. We have access to the medical journals. Prior to AA, people were just dying. All right, they would chain people to beds. Not good, you know. And then a bunch of degenerate alcoholics came along, and not only did they help other alcoholics, but then a program like Al-Anon comes along and starts helping the family members.
Exactly.
The route, really, I kind of break this down for my clients too, which ties into just bits and pieces I'm hearing from your story, is following structured routines that open you up emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. If you do that, wash, rinse, repeat, your life gets better.
100%.
That's therapy too, in a nutshell. That's what we're trying to help you do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like those are things that have really, really worked for you.
Oh,
And
100%.
now you're prepping yourself to get ready to offer that to your community on a deeper level.
Yeah, no, it's been one heck of a journey to be here I am today, and I'm still on the journey of growth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why therapy? I mean, we've heard a lot about why for you, but why become a therapist? Why pursue it?
Why would I pursue it?
Mm-hmm.
There's this, and I said that briefly in the other podcast. It's a purpose for me. It's very meaningful work for me, but it's also, why was I given this life? I have done all the treatment. I honestly have done so much therapy and modalities, and I'm still struggling daily with my own struggles. But I at least have the coping skills to get through them. But I just know, and I've always felt ever since I was 12 years old, I always said to myself, one day, and then 15 became stronger. Like, one day I'm going to help young people. And I just think this has been my journey for a reason. And I truly, truly believe that I really hope my story one day can help other people out there, even if it's somebody who's so young and a teenager and feel like they don't see hope or light at the end of the tunnel. And I want to be that voice for them. I want to be the voice and make them feel that they're not alone.
Yeah.
I want to help them.
Yeah. I mean, listening to you as a career therapist, I would like to encourage you to I mean, I know you're going to stay on the path. We were already talking about it even before you came in. I can tell you're passionate, but just hearing you, I would encourage you, especially with the young people. Well, one of the things I talk with a lot of clinician friends about is kids, like when you're working with minors, they're some of the most unobservable, the impact that you're making, but the impact happens so quickly.
I know.
Whereas adults, the impact is observable, but it takes so long.
Exactly.
For some, all right? But it's just hearing your story. There's going to be plenty of people out there. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are going to hear this and feel encouraged and have that impact from your story that just lights that little fire to, well, hey, maybe I need to pick up the phone and call this therapist, or, and that's just encouraging. And I'm glad you had reached out to us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's always exciting. I put stuff out there to get people interested in coming on the show, and you were ready to go.
Oh, yes. I've always wanted to be on podcasts. So.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting to have you,
Thank you.
It's a fun conversation. And,
yes.
Yeah. It's good to hear the hope.
Yeah, that's my big thing for anybody, to take away today is there's hope and there's help out there. Yeah. And I hope that, if it's I don't know, like a Nora Mental Health Forward or whoever, there is help and there is hope.
Yeah. Let's think through this one for a moment, right? A hypothetical. You're at the end of your career. You've had a long, fruitful career. You're retiring. You're kind of coasting through with those last couple clients that you're transitioning out. What do you hope that clients would have said about you as a therapist someday?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would love if my future clients would say, like, Bianca has helped me so much. Those words are very meaningful for me. Or Bianca, she has helped me to become to live, like have a fulfilling life, to help me find a life worth living. I want to make sure that I made an impact, because that's the work I want to do. I want to make sure that these clients are getting the help that they need, and ultimately, hopefully they don't need me anymore. And if they do, that's okay. But I want them to be successful and live the life that they want to do. I want them to do whatever they want to do in life. And I hope that my future clients could see that the passion, the drive, the personal experience. I would always take snippets of my personal experience if there's something that's related to the conversation, like in the session, to make sure that they know, like, it's okay. Like, I'm here, and I'm here to help you, and I understand, and I know what you're going through. And that's been hard for me, seeing a therapist before who don't understand, because I feel like books can only teach so much.
Yeah.
You know, books can only teach, but experience teaches so much more.
Yeah, way more. And I teach young clinicians often, you're the best tool that you have access to. It was a lesson my therapist taught me.
Yeah.
You're the sharpest tool that you have access to in that room at any given time. And when we make space for the client enough to be able at times to share in that,
Yeah.
right, there is just so much growth in that for everyone involved. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember, I remember my first ERP therapist, I was in Minnesota, and I don't know what ERP is, but I don't know what's going on, you know, and she mentioned to me that she struggles with similar things, and it made a huge difference for me in my recovery, because I was like, oh, you know. And she said, like, what she helped, and that's why she became a therapist, and that's how she became like a better version of herself.
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference between being a good therapist and a great therapist, and I think,
Sure.
yeah.
You know, when you stay on the path, you find it. You know, you turn corners in this career, and I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you.
You know, there's ups and downs
Yeah.
and all kinds of things. I don't need to go into it. You'll figure it out, but I support you, and I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have a question I ask everyone when they're new on the show. It's kind of an out-of-the-box question.
Okay.
You could take your time kind of thinking through it. But
Okay.
if we were going to build a mental health amusement park and you got to build a ride there, what would you call it, and what would it do?
That's okay. Okay, I need to think. Ooh. Okay. What would I call the ride or the amusement park?
What would you call the ride?
Okay. This is a different name. And also this is a name I've always wanted to write a book about my testimony. So this is going to be, but anyway, this is the name that comes up. Living Through the Darkness. But I'll change it to Riding Through the Darkness.
Okay.
And it would be a roller coaster, just goes up and down and twirls. And just like the anxiety, you know, like the roller coaster of anxiety.
Would it be kind of like Space Mountain at Disneyland where it's inside and all the lights are off? Is that?
Oh, man. See, that makes me anxious. I hate rides like that. Honestly, for exposure purposes, yes.
Yeah,
It would
fair
be
enough.
just nothing. Yeah.
I love that answer.
Thank you.
While we have a captive audience, do you have any last words you would share to anybody who's checking in with us tonight?
Yeah, I would say thank you for watching. And also, I hope that, you know, if anything you take away today, that I just want to let you know that there's hope and there's help out there. And it's okay if you're not okay. It's okay to ask for help. You're not alone. There's so many people out there who are struggling. And I think it's very, what's the word? English is gone. It's very brave for people to ask for help. That's one of the bravest things you can do, is asking for help and not, you know, saying like, hey, I have a problem, like I'm struggling. And so for anybody out there, if it's you and you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. And whether it's getting help from, Nora Mental Health Fort Worth, or from anybody else, that I just hope that you're brave enough to ask for help.
Absolutely. Where can they find Nora Mental Health Fort Worth? Is there a specific website tag?
Yeah, so we do have a website, just like Nora Mental Health, and you can click on location. You'll see all the locations out there. There's a few now, and click on Fort Worth if you're in Fort Worth. And we also have a LinkedIn page, Nora Mental Health Fort Worth, and that's mostly where we're at right now. We're also on social media, but it's for the whole Nora.
Cool.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure to tag the Fort Worth one in our YouTube video.
Thank you.
When we take it from live to a static video. When we do that, we'll put the link.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bianca LaRue, owner of Nora Mental Health Fort Worth. We break the cycle here every Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you next week with another guest. We love you. Bye.